Good evening, everyone, and welcome to American Scouser TV's EPL panel show. I am the host for now, taking over Mecca for a little bit. Unfortunately, I am not as witty, not as charming, and just frankly not as good of a host. But at least I'm joined by two wonderful people that will help me make this show as good as it can be. We have Glenn and Sully. Glenn, how are you doing today, my friend?
Yeah, doing good. Still processing a very complicated transfer deadline day for all three of our clubs. All three of us were in the absolute midst of it. In the midst of it, we were in the eye of the storm, weren't we? All three of us, and it was every deal was hinging on somebody else. So plenty for us three to talk about.
Definitely enough for us to talk about. Hassan joining us this evening as well. Good evening, Hassan, and we're also joined by Sully. How are you doing?
I've been better. This is probably the best I've felt in several weeks. Onwards and upwards.
Getting some closure and just having the next steps to know where you are and go forward. Now we have to leave. We can leave everything behind that you needed to, and now you just look ahead, right? I mean, that's the big thing, right?
I'm an Irish Catholic. I carry baggage with me everywhere, so this is going to be a long season for me.
Well, we get to all enjoy it together then. So I guess we have some pretty big talking points. I think the deadline day is going to be the big one. The transfer window as a whole, I think we'll go into it. I wanted to talk to each of you about your team's transfer window in general to see as far as incomings and outgoings, how you feel about everything. But I think we should just start with the match week last week and kind of get some thoughts here. I know, Glenn, we'll start with you. Tough loss against Sunderland there at the Stadium of Light. Not an easy place to play, right? I mean, I think whether they're in the Championship, whether they're in the Premier League, whether they fall to League Two. I mean, the Stadium of Light is always a difficult place to play, and so I guess what happened?
Yeah, it all went wrong, really. I mean, it was a low quality, intensely contested, very low quality first half. I think most people watching it, I found it very funny that I'm pretty sure it was the USA pick of the games. So it seemed to be the premium game in America, which is really fun because it clearly wasn't. But it was a pretty tough watch. It was very low on, cutting edge from both teams. But we did end up taking the lead. Right, that was huge. Thiago getting another goal, but a real turning point for us and a real disaster was missing a penalty. Right, we get awarded a penalty. It looked a little soft. Their one was also a little soft, a couple of soft penalties, but we get awarded a penalty. And for whatever reason, I don't know if this is the player's fault or the manager's fault, Kevin Schade steps up to take it, which was really odd considering Thiago is on the pitch. He'd scored a penalty in the first game of the season. And Kevin Schade never looked confident. He's not had a particularly memorable start to the season. That shouldn't affect your penalty taking ability, but something about it just felt very, very odd. We had other players on the pitch who could also take good penalties in theory. So he stepped up, he missed. And the problem with that was the miss really galvanized the Stadium of Light, right? And you're talking about the fans, that it's always a hostile atmosphere. They'd been quiet for large portions of the game because they hadn't had much to cheer about. It was just not a great game of football, to be perfectly honest. It was a weak game of football. But the second your keeper makes a save from a penalty, it can change the entire game. And then they end up getting a penalty, they score it, and then they get a late winner. It's just such a deflating result. I'm not going to say, oh, we deserve to win, we were so much better. But when all's said and done, when you're ahead away from home, when you have a penalty awarded, you certainly want to come away with something. I think a draw would have been okay. I wouldn't actually have minded that. I said before the game last week on the show, I think I said I'll take a point because an away point's always good. Yeah, it was crushing for the goal to come so late. It feels like it undid some of the good work we did in the week against both Bournemouth in the Cup, who we beat, and against Villa in the league. It felt sad to kind of bookend those things with this dreadful performance at Forest and then this really kind of sorry collapse at Sunderland. So yeah, it was a tough one to take. It wasn't a nice game to watch. And yeah, you both know, well, obviously you know, Sully, those last minute goals really hurt when every point matters in the Premier League. They really, really hurt.
I was going to say, speaking of not so nice things to watch, Newcastle Leeds. Sully, tell us what went on there.
What is there to talk about? I mean, we obviously were completely burned out from a highly emotional Liverpool game. Glenn having our hearts ripped out right at the death. Even though it never should have come down to that. Once again, a Big Six legacy club receiving favorable treatment from a match official, throwing on so much stoppage time, just ridiculous. But I digress. We were a shell of a team. We had 5 at the back. It didn't look like we were trying to do all that much. Even the stats show that there was not much between us and Leeds. And looking across at just about every game, I think this was kind of a weekend where players were feeling the end of the transfer window coming up. There were not a ton of action-packed, barn burners for games. Relatively low scoring for the most part. Couple of upsets. The one guy who looked like the transfer window wasn't bugging him at all was Mark Gee for Palace. But I think this was kind of a low weekend for the Prem, and not just with the transfer window ending and all of that hanging above everybody. That's all that was being talked about. But you got an international break coming up this weekend, so I think there was a lot of things on other players' minds. It just kind of looked that way. But I mean, we were hapless. We were never going to score. We had to put Jacob Murphy up in a striker position, which is absolutely insane. I mean, he is a very serviceable right winger. This is coming from a guy who loves Jacob Murphy, who saw what he did last season, and has just been a club stalwart for so long. He's not a forward. If you're relying on him to score your goals, you've got bigger issues than might be apparent. So we look hapless. We're going to go into the international break. We're going to get things right. We'll come back swinging in a couple weeks here.
I think this is, like you mentioned, I think an emotionally taxing first 2-3 weeks for a lot of these clubs. A lot of things to be considered, right? When you think about the summer and you think about the transfer window, you think about this going into a World Cup year. I think that's a lot of emotions that are going on in these clubs. And it's very weird to think that for the first time, at least from my viewpoint as a Liverpool fan, like typically when we go into an international break, we would rather not have that break because we want to we feel good. We want to keep that going, keep the momentum going, because these first 3 games have been so not great. There's a lot to be left. There's a lot to be desired for. I think it's come at a good time for every club as just a reset after this transfer window, because it's been an absolutely wild transfer window. I think it was over $3 billion spent in the Prem alone, which, I know some people are going to joke around and say that the Super League is already here with the amount of money that's being spent, but there is a little bit of that in the sense that we have so many clubs that can spend so much money, and it can be frustrating to see that when you look at clubs on the other end of it who don't have that kind of money. How are they supposed to compete, right? We can't keep sending 3 clubs up and 3 clubs down.
And Glenn and I are sitting in a position where we have had players who have just thrown a bitch fit about what's going on with their transfers and stuff. I don't think it was terribly taxing on those guys. I think more about the guys who were sticking around, playing for their club, playing their contract out. I think it would have been much more taxing for them, being like, okay, I'm out here busting my butt. I got a lot of emotions. This might be the last time I wear this kit in front of these fans. I'm going to go out on my shield, but I think I don't envy those guys. Like the guys who played it straight, who were good sports, who were professionals. I don't envy that. That had to have been a very, very tough position for a lot of those guys to be in, and some guys focused and rose to the moment, and other guys I think just sort of capitulated and really felt the pressure of what they were going through as players.
So I guess, Glenn, to piggyback off of that, we saw it's really easy for me to look at it from a Liverpool perspective because I'm focusing mainly
I bet it is
players that we're interested in, right? So you look at someone like Isak versus someone like Gahey, right? Both players who, in their own right, wanted to go somewhere else, who both did it completely different ways. Like Sully was saying, you have on one side complete professional through and through, played every game, was there for the team, was there as the captain, and was denied a move that by all accounts he was wanting to have, right? And then you have on the other side a guy like Isak who arguably did it all the wrong way. We're going to have many opinions about that, but I guess what is there a right way? I mean, is there a bit of hypocrisy when it comes from fans saying, like if a player isn't performing well, we're the first to just cast them out. But if they want to go out somewhere, then all of a sudden they're getting accosted by the fans. Like, where's the line there? Where's the trade-off there?
Yeah, it's a good dilemma, isn't it? I just think respect is the part of the discussion that's been missing with Wissa and Isak. There just hasn't been, in my opinion, in both cases, respect for the clubs, respect for the fans, respect for their legacy. That's what it comes down to for me. I mean, you can push for a move, you can agitate for a move. That is, part of the footballing world. That's part of life, right? If there's a better career opportunity for you, you're probably going to want to take that. But yeah, there's ways to do it and there's ways to really not do it. I think it is deeply ironic, right, that Gehi has suffered after doing everything right and he gets shafted come the final seconds of the window. And I do think it's actually really, really fascinating because what Isak and Wissa did, well, effectively was go on strike, right? Sully, both of us could have done with them fit and firing for the first 3 games of the season. We'd probably both have more points, almost certainly, like hands down. So their actions have made a real difference, at least the way our seasons have started. And that's fine. There's other factors, but we've both been missing attacking talent in the first couple of games, obviously. But then, the defender for Palace does everything right, is scoring goals up until basically transfer deadline day as the captain, is playing every minute. And it's interesting that those 2 players for us went on strike. And it sounds as if for Crystal Palace, the manager effectively was throwing his weight around in terms of labor relations. From what I understand and what's kind of emerging this morning as we're kind of clearing the debris of this bizarre window, it sounds very much as if Glasner said to Steve Parish, the owner, if you sell him, I'm leaving. And it's really interesting because you see a couple of people laying down ultimatums, and it seemed to be the way to get what you want was laying down an ultimatum, whether that was Wissa or Isak or Glasner. That's probably unsustainable because you're going to get, if this is accepted as like the norm moving forward in Windows, you're going to get multiple people laying down ultimatums, right? You might have the manager, the owner, and the player at complete and utter crossroads, right? Complete contradictions in their positions. So I think it's interesting to see the people who stood their ground the hardest did seem to get what they wanted. But I'll be very curious in January or more likely next summer when multiple people are doing that. If we're setting a precedent where if you dig your heels in and you basically go on strike, you can leave. I don't think that sets a fantastic precedent for moving forward. Mr. Battle Red thinks differently. I mean, he thinks it's the club ownership in all 3 cases that have fucked up. I mean, I completely disagree with that. I think
Mr. Bat Red eats paint chips, but that's neither here nor there.
I don't think that really takes into account, the financial situation, the player power, all of these things that come into these conversations. I don't think it's the club ownership at all in these 3 cases. You can make a case for the owners not necessarily meeting promises that have allegedly been made, but I think that is a very convenient way of just, taking something out of context, layering what's beneficial for you. For Liverpool, it's beneficial for Newcastle to sell Isak and for Palace to sell Gehi. That's beneficial for you. Doesn't mean it's beneficial for the other clubs involved, right? And, it's not a one-to-one comparison as discussed before. I'm not comparing them directly as we did on previous shows, but it's a very different story for Liverpool fans when you mention transfers and player power and a certain right back who's now playing somewhere in Spain. It's a very different story. And I'm not saying they're one-to-one, but I am saying there's a level of hypocrisy there because in my opinion, Mr. Battle Red, it was the ownership of Liverpool that messed up with Trent. So it's tough to have it both ways, I think.
Yeah, and Sully, I obviously want your thoughts on this too. I think for me specifically, I do the morning shows with Timochin every Monday, and I feel like there's obviously millions of fans, but I feel like both of us are able to sit back and take a more objective approach to something like this, and understand that there is such a level of hypocrisy amongst, especially our fans, that some of us struggle to see. And it's always through the rose tinted glasses that you're going to look at everything, right? So I think to your point, Glenn, there absolutely is a lot of hypocrisy that goes there, and when it benefits your side, you feel good about it, and then when it doesn't benefit your side, there's some sort of excuse, that doesn't make it okay, because no one else is able to do that, right? So, Sully, I guess some of your thoughts to Mr. Bat Red's comments about the ownership being fucked up. What are your thoughts on this here?
Well, like, I mean, I don't think the ownership fucked up. Like, if you're a player, if you're an agent, put the clauses into the contract. There's nobody's holding a gun to your head and saying you can't put a release clause in here. Put it in writing. All right. The ownership group at Newcastle, I don't think is sitting there saying, yeah, you know what, if we put that clause in, we're not gonna honor that. Like, Isak didn't even put in for a transfer. He didn't even put in for one. Like, this handling has been so poor by the players, and I mean, it sucks saying, like, I am a huge advocate for unionization, workers' rights, labor, all of that. Like, now, Isak, you're being a dick right now. You're being a dick. You signed the contract. You got to play out the contract. Nobody forced you. I mean, it's almost like the Scottie Pippen situation with the Bulls during the early 90s. He signed a contract that he knew was going to be undervalued, but he needed that money up front to take care of his family. And he was told, do not sign this contract, and then threw a hissy fit when he outplayed that contract. Have a little bit of forward thinking. Have a little bit. I mean, these promises, like, if it's not in writing, who cares? Who cares? Shelvey was leaving. You should have nailed her down and said, I need to get a new contract now. Now, it does sound like this Mitchell guy is a real piece of work and a piece of garbage, but you had your chance, you missed it, and now you're like, wait, no, I want to go back to that. I want that again. Like, you can't do that. And on top of that, no club in a league should be responsible for the top 3 signings in a transfer window. No one club should have the ability, if we're going by financial fair play and everything, to have the 3 biggest contracts come out of one window. If that's the way we are going to go in the Prem, then we might as well just call ourselves La Liga East or West, because we're going to deal with a Real Madrid and Barcelona situation. It's only ever going to be 2 teams competing, and yeah, it's an absolute mess. It's a travesty. Yes, I think we were able to improve our squad despite this Isak bullshit, but at the end of the day, it was disgraceful. And one of our best signings, I can't even feel good about. I cannot feel good about bringing Vissa into our club because of the way he handled everything with his Brentford exit. It's taking one snake and replacing it with a rat. Like, it's not something you can hang your hat on. I don't think a lot of Newcastle fans are out here, tooting our horn about signing Vissa. Yes, we wanted him, but the way he handled this has just left a terrible taste, I think, in a majority of our fan base's mouths. So we'll have to see the level of we'll have to see what reaction he gets when he finally takes the field for us. I know what kind of reaction he's going to get when we go to Brentford. I mean, that's going to be ugly. That's going to be real ugly. But yeah, it stings for what should have eventually been a good transfer window for us. Kick out Isak, get rid of him, bring in replacements, we move on. But instead, we're left with this bitter pill.
Glenn, do do you feel that kind of bitterness at the end of this window as well? Because I think you guys had a pretty decent window to begin with. I felt like it felt really good. Is this something that the fan base will get over rather quickly, or do you have quite a bit of bitterness at the end there?
I mean, it's mainly relief, to be perfectly honest. I mean, it sounds like the deal being signed, right, Sully, went right to the wire in terms of getting paperwork through and everything. I mean, how funny would that have been if they had struggled? I think you've just frozen, Sully. If that had just gone a few seconds later.
Yeah, no, I'm back.
That was correct, right? That it went right to the wire.
Yeah,
the paperwork.
There was that report there was a report that some of the Newcastle training staff had to run through the facility to chase down Vissa because he had forgotten to sign part of the contract, and it got in with like 30 seconds before the deadline officially closed.
Yeah, which is really funny because he drove himself up overnight. He was so keen to get the deal, like Peter Odemwingie a couple years ago. Yeah, I agree. And fair play to Mr. Bat Red, very much, backing up their points very fairly in the chat as well about ownership stuff. Really respect that. Yeah, I mean, I think that honestly the biggest issue for us this window was losing Thomas Frank. That was the real destabilizing force. We knew that Mbeumo was going to go. That was totally fine. That was great. It's time to cash in. I mean, that's a huge sum of money we're getting for him. In a perfect world, Wissa would have stayed because we could have really used him this season. But he's going to turn 29 this week. I think perhaps even tomorrow. However many million for whatever it was, like 50 odd, whatever it came to in the end for a 29-year-old who's had one outstanding season. I mean, 19 open play goals is insane in the Premier League, so we need to accept that for what it is, which is an unbelievable season of football. But he's the best part of 30, and we're getting a huge chunk of money for him. And it's not as if he's been a 20-goal striker for 2 or 3 seasons or 4 seasons. He's just been a very good player for us. So yeah, I don't feel any bitterness about the way it unfolded. Christian Norgard was an incredible transfer. That was just announced and wrapped up in like 24 hours to Arsenal. That was like a stealth transfer. That was crazy. That was really sad as well. And then Flecken, obviously, we've kind of replaced with Kelleher, who a lot would probably argue is an upgrade. Although he had a really ropey game against Sunderland, I would say he did not look very good at all. But I truly believe he is an outstanding goalkeeper. So to be perfectly honest, that's exactly what I've got pulled up on the side of my window as well now. The outgoings were hard, right? Mbeumo, Vissa, Norgard, Flecken, and then just a couple of others. Like, that's not great, but we did get a huge chunk of money, which for a club like us is like incredible. We're selling over $120 million this window. That's incredible. I will say in terms of how we invested it, I don't know. Jordan Henderson, great signing. He's going to be really good. Free transfer. Really respect everything he's bringing to the club. He's included in the England squad for the international break, so he's still in the England mix for better or worse, if you ask anyone English. And then we brought in a couple of other players, right? I think the standout for us was Atara, which we've just seen in the chat. Yeah, it was both of those things. So Mr. Batred just said Atara was a big fee, but a great forward. I would agree with both parts of that. I feel it was a lot. I was listening to the Athletic podcast today, their kind of top 10 transfer moments, and they actually put that transfer as the biggest overpayment in the window. It's a lot of money, is what I'd say. And I think if you looked at it in isolation in terms of minutes played, you'd think, oh, he's a second choice forward for Bournemouth. But that doesn't really tell the whole story. And when he's on the pitch, he does make things happen. He's already scored for us, which was awesome. Got the winner on his debut against Villa. A lot of promise there. I do feel we probably did overpay by maybe, 5-10 million. But when that's said and done, teams know we have money, right? So they're going to charge us top dollar to make a replacement, just like you, Sully. And that's exactly what we did with the Wissa Isak movements. We know you're going to come into 120 million. We want a chunk of that because you're replacing him. It's all it's all roundabouts, really. A lot of teams are in kind of similar positions, but then other teams like Liverpool do seem to have, despite making many sales, I will admit that absolutely makes sense. They sold a lot of players too, but having that kind of disproportionate financial reach does make everything else hard and does make all the other transfers revolve around them, right? But yeah, it's a weird window. I'm not bitter. I'm actually delighted that we pushed the Wissa transfer over the line. We obviously didn't want him at the club. Reintegrating him or Isak with their respective teams would have been incredibly challenging. And I'm really glad we don't have to go through that. Take the money. I wouldn't say you've overpaid Newcastle. You've paid what he's worth, but I do think that's a lot of money for a player of his age and experience. So, yeah, it's just we're just going to see. We've got a thinner squad now, right? Not necessarily in terms of like whole squad, but certainly in terms of attacking options. But we did bring in Reece Nelson, which I forgot about right on the death yesterday. I woke up to see that. So interesting. He might be a decent signing for us. He did well for Fulham before he got injured last season. So that kind of came out of left field, and we'll see. I think he'll add some quality for us.
I think the fee with Ouattara as well is he's young, right? He's 23, 24 years old. So I think 42 million in the Prem for a winger like that, I don't necessarily think is an overpay. I can understand where the sentiment is coming from, but when you, like you said, in isolation, it might feel like a lot, but then when you compare it, and honestly, I feel like Wissa was a bit of an overpay. I think at that age, it's tough to justify that amount for a guy that like you said, Glenn, had one great season. You're not really sure what else you're going to get out of him. Now, maybe with better service all around him, maybe he's going to have a great season too. But I feel like the partnership with him and Mbeumo was so good. I don't know if he's going to have that same level of partnership with someone at Newcastle. So that brings us over to you, Sully, as far as your transfer window goes, and pop it up here in the screen. And put that on the screen and let you go for it.
You know, this was something I was thinking about, Glenn, when I saw that fee. Do you ever feel like we also have to, like, as, you know, I don't want to say small to mid-sized clubs, because I mean, no offense, Newcastle is a bigger club in size than Brentford.
Absolutely.
But we are still not in that upper echelon. And do you ever get the sense that we have to overpay to cover our names? Like, we have to pay because we don't have name recognition. So not only that, but not only do we have less money to spend than the big teams, but that less money goes less because we're having to use so much of it simply to be like, please come play for us, please. Like, that is something a Liverpool fan is never ever going to have to deal with, is that, and that's why they, kind of got away with cheaping out on Newcastle, trying to offer only 110 million for Isak. Do I think Isak is a $130 million player? I don't know. He's been very solid for us, but I think it was us partly. I think it was the club partly. But Liverpool is a team that can afford that. You spending $42 million is like the equivalent of Liverpool spending $200 million. For us, with Voltamade or Voltamade, that $85 million might as well be $120 million with the way our pay structure works. So we're fighting a two-front battle when it comes to doing business in these transfer windows that is really set up to keep 6 teams up at the top and everybody else below them. Now, Matoush, back to your actual question. I got a little sidetracked there. I like a lot of these players. I think this was a very good transfer window if you did not have the specter of Isak hanging over the whole thing. Voltamade, awesome. I had not heard of this guy until we signed him. I am now his biggest fan. His YouTube compilations are bizarre. Have you guys watched any of his highlights yet?
He is a
very
real interesting figure to watch on the pitch, because just his size alone, he's a weird one to watch.
He's 6'6". He's as tall as Dan Burn, but he dribbles. They called him Volta Messi at Stuttgart. Like, his footwork should not be as good. It looks like you created a character in FIFA, maxed his height, and then maxed touch, possession, and dribbling. Like, he is not going to be sort of like this Gyökeres, I'm going to bully people up top. I think he can get there, but his finesse ability it doesn't look real. They look like AI generated goals when you go on YouTube. Alenga, he's going to be great for us. Good reinforcement. Vissa, going to be great. We needed somebody like that with the multiple fronts we're going to be fighting on this year with the cup draws and Champions League. Ramsey is going to need to step up sooner rather than later with the injury to Joelinton and Tonali not quite being at 100%. Theo, he's going to be solid for us. I don't think that's any concern there. He's going to be a good replacement, and that's where we're going to have to start building also is our defense is aging pretty quickly. So we got to start reinforcing back there. Ramsdale, he'll be a solid backup. That Antonio Cordero is an interesting pickup. We loaned him out right away. 18 years old. He's going to be a player to keep an eye on. I'm really hoping some of these loan projects we have out there start to pan out, because those are the guys we are going to need to fill our team with eventually. But again, other than the issues with Isak and his lack of professionalism, I have no complaints about this transfer window. Would have been nice to keep Longstaff. You know, we love Longstaff here, but otherwise, I think we did good business. I think we replaced who we had to replace, and unfortunately, a Swedish snake gave us just a little bit more stuff we had to worry about that we were not planning on addressing this transfer window.
I guess the one thing while you were talking about everything is that came to mind is, you know, I remember a window where I had to celebrate Ricky Lambert like he was the next best thing, because that's the only player that wanted to come to Liverpool at that time. And while I understand the feelings of having this big club where players want to play, that's based on the back of success as well. Because there was a period of time right after Rodgers where things were really, really rough and no one wanted to come play here. And so I guess I also look to clubs like Brighton, also look to clubs like Bournemouth, who also make really good business, because I think their scouting departments are incredibly good. So I think that you can make your own luck if you are not a club that's part of the top six, so to speak. And because even the top six, I mean, they're going to overpay for players all the time. You see Arsenal overpaying for players nearly every other week during the transfer window. So I get the frustrations when it comes to the window, but I think there is a level of, if there is success, players like to follow success, and it's not always as peachy as we would like it to be. I think also Mr. Batred saying that there's value to be had in Europe all around. Like Frimpong at 29. I mean, getting McAllister for 40 million off a release clause. We missed Champions League that year, but we were able to find something in the contract that allowed us to then be able to jump on that for that amount. So I think there's little pockets there that I guess you can appreciate more than just being a big club.
But that making your own luck has a ceiling to it. There is
Sure.
only so much you can do with that. But we still have and you know, Liverpool really doesn't have a basement. Basement for Liverpool is 8th or 9th. Basement for Brentford or Newcastle is playing in the Championship. So it's a much, you know, we're kind of in a box here. Like, your elevator starts at like the 9th floor and goes up. Our elevator goes only down from the 9th floor. You know what I mean? Like, so that is also where a lot of frustration comes in. And again, the Arsenal overpaying is not going to have the same level of long-term impact than a team like Brentford or Newcastle overpaying.
Sure. I'm not going to disagree with that. Glenn, any thoughts there?
Yeah, I disagree. I totally agree. Actually, I was going to say, I think another interesting example is like when teams do overperform, arguably like Crystal Palace, because of PSR and other stuff that is designed with good intention, but can get somewhat warped in practice. Not that I disagree with having regulation of transfers or just like financial spending, because it is crazy, it does seem to really impact the clubs that overachieve the most. I mean, you're seeing a club like Palace, I mean, stripped for parts is a little bit strong, but had he left, they've lost their superstar man in Eze. Over the year, they've lost Elise, season before that. Like, you get clubs who are in this kind of middle to upper echelon, which, Newcastle in some degrees have been in part of that kind of crowd the last couple of seasons and have done excellently, obviously, last season. But, the clubs who are just striving basically to be the best that they can be in the Premier League. There is a limit, as Sully's saying, to clubs' buying power, to their kind of attractiveness to other players. Like, yeah, it does feel like it's tricky because, like, we usually do a lot of our business in Europe or abroad, right? It's actually quite strange to see Brentford kind of grappling with other Premier League teams. It's not really how we usually run the show. And when we do try that, it doesn't usually end particularly well. Like Brennan Johnson, right? Season before last, we were desperate to sign him. And he made it pretty clear early on that he didn't really have any intention in going to Brentford. And that's fine. That is what it is. But, a team like Spurs that just has a little bit more of that money, a bit of that name recognition, a bit of that kind of buying power in terms of soft power and hard power, like financially, like, yeah, it's tricky. But at the same time, I'm not going to say that Brentford should have, Brentford is not going to have the same clout or spending power or any of those things as probably at least 10 other teams in the Premier League, maybe even the best part of 15. So I do think it's interesting it's really useful to stay grounded, and it is interesting to see how other clubs are kind of navigating this, because yeah, it's always frustrating to see bigger clubs soak up the bulk of players, but obviously that is the reality we've been in for a couple of years now. It's just we don't want it to become a closed shop, right? The Premier League itself is becoming a closed shop because the 3 that come up and go down may change this season. But we also don't want the top 3, 4 to also become a closed shop, because it's really boring when teams like Liverpool, Man City, Chelsea, and Arsenal can kind of always keep themselves floating towards the top of the table, because they can do this. Obviously, it isn't foolproof, and teams like Man United have shown how you can intensely squander this exceptional cultural, financial, social advantage. Like, money does not equal success 1-to-1 in the Premier League, which is the only reason at least I watch the league. Otherwise, it would be incredibly boring, or like La Liga or whatever else Sully says, these pretty flat leagues where it's 1 or 2 teams always competing. But yeah, it is a little cliche. And like, you look at a team like Chelsea, I mean, it's challenging, isn't it? Because they are absorbing players. I'm Buonanotte on deadline day, they're just absorbing just like player after player after player. And then there's like interchanges between them and other teams they own in Europe, which is kind of uncomfortable, right? It's tough. It's a bit of a Pandora's box. Yeah, so it's a tough one.
Well, Glenn, back to what you said about Man U. Man U is an interesting case study because they're still signing the big name players. They're getting players to come to them because they are Manchester United, despite the fact that they've been ass for 10 years. Like, they're attracting simply based on name and the ability to spend more money despite sucking. So it's like, if if my team or your team sucks for a year, we don't get that kind of grace. We don't get that, like, oh, you know what, I'm going to sign for Brentford because I'm going to be the one who can turn it around. No. A team like Manchester United has that because they have name recognition, because they still have money, because they are a brand. And that the brandification of soccer has really done a detriment to this sport.
Question coming in for Glenn here. Would you say Brighton has more resources than Brentford?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm pretty sure their team value is like double ours. Yeah, they've been established in the Premier League for longer. We have similar models, right? We both have incredible scouting networks, and we both do things relatively similar. But yeah, I would say Brighton they have pretty significantly more resources than Brentford, but it looks similar because we use them in very similar ways. But yeah, the club is worth nearly double what Brentford is. So I think that speaks to that.
I think this is something too. It is a big part where you can't have clubs like Brentford offer the kind of money to Mbeumo that he's getting at United. It's just there's a pay structure that will work for each club, and that kind of pay structure wouldn't work at a club like Brentford. So I think, Sully, well, I do agree with you that there is name recognition there, and there I feel like, especially with United recently, you get a lot of that. Oh, I'll be the hero that turns Old Trafford around kind of feeling. But sometimes it really is just, hey, they're going to offer me 250,000 a week. Yeah, I'm going to go there. Right. And I know that that's a tough thing because not every club can offer that. But then what is the solution? Do you completely Americanize it and socialize and make a salary cap? Like there's no way that we're going to have people and the owners over in England agree to a salary cap in any way. So I guess it's difficult because what is the fix?
The fix is get rid of PSR, let Newcastle spend all of our Saudi money, and we win the Premier League. That's how we fix this whole thing. So yeah, I'm punching up right now. Like we got screwed because of all the financial rules coming into play right after we get bought. And it's tough to not look at that as a Newcastle screw job and a protection of the 6 biggest brands within the Premier League.
Especially when you compare that situation to a situation like Chelsea's, where they have clubs across Europe and they can pretty much just bounce whichever player they want across any of those clubs, absorb whatever they need to absorb, and it never hits the books, and they're absolutely fine. It is getting down a very slippery slope where the lines are getting blurred, and the teams, the clubs, the players, the managers that are getting punished are the ones that represent clubs that are notoriously out of that top six, that top echelon, if you will. So it is frustrating. I do agree with that. So with that being said, I guess if you were to give your clubs a grade for the transfer window, let's say a score out of 100. Glenn, let's start with you. What do you give Brentford this transfer window?
I mean that is really tricky. I maybe like somewhere between a C and a low B. I mean, maybe just 80 on the mark. I mean, I think it's worth considering just with the particular player power of this window and with the way our club is structured. Sales were always inevitable. I think we replaced Flecken with arguably an even better keeper, Kelleher. I think that was a great signing. I think he'll be a rock for us. I think Jordan Henderson, while short term, was a very smart piece of business. He will step into Norgard's shoes for at least a season. And although he won't be as fit and as sprightly, he will do a very good, sensible job. I think that was smart business. Making Michael Coyote permanent was brilliant. He looks like such an electric right back. He's a thrilling player. He's the biggest long throw, Rory Delap-esque I possibly have ever seen in the Premier League. And then Milambo's come in from Feyenoord. Looks okay. There's probably one for the future. He's quite young. And then obviously our big money signing was Atara. I think somewhere around there, I mean, yes, I mean 75, 80, it's tricky because obviously we would have really liked to have bought in a forward, right? Obviously losing Rissa at the last minute. We've got Thiago, who was our club record signing last window in the summer for 30 million, who was injured all of last season. He scored a couple of goals already. So if he stays fit, in theory, he is the replacement for Visser, and he was already at the club and he was already a record signing, right? But yeah, it's tough to look at this window and really celebrate it. Of course, it's been tough to see your team kind of stripped apart. Again, Reece Nelson might be a pretty smart last-minute signing as well. Give a bit of cover on the left. If Kevin Schade continues his rather lukewarm form to the season, Nelson could be a little bit of dynamite on the left and could really help us. So yeah, I mean, it's fine. It was never going to be good. It was always going to be pretty horrible as a Brentford fan. Yeah, maybe like maybe a higher C, 70, call it 78. I think it's got to be a C because of the players we lost, but that is our model. So I'm not saying if I was in charge, I would have done something drastically different at all. I'm just saying it really shows the limitations of our model in the Premier League.
Yeah, I mean, if anything, the money that you got in for both Mbeumo and Wissa are worth a good grade alone, just on the fact of what it can prevent, or what it can give you moving forward as well. So, Sully, same question to you. Out of 100, Newcastle, where are you at?
I'm right in that ballpark. I would go anywhere from a 77 to an 82, C plus, B minus. Depending on how some of these transfers play out, it almost feels like we're turning, we turned this project in at 11:55 for a midnight deadline, and we're just happy with whatever grade we get out of this. That's kind of where we're at. We're gonna have to see how these players develop. I will say I am happy that we did not get rid of Osula, even though getting 30 million for him would have been incredible. There is no way in hell Will Ozula is worth that much money from Frankfurt. I would have liked to have seen that money because I'm not a math guy. I don't know how all of these signings are going to fit in terms of financial fair play, but I like having him still on the team. I think that's a low key success for us, given how young he is and how much he likes being here. So we'll see. It was by no means a stellar transfer window just because of how stressful it was, but I do think we stabilized ourselves, and I think give it a few months and these players are going to gel real quick with the rest of the team.
I think I want to just slightly adjustment. I mean, I think for me it's interesting because there seems to be a selling grade and a buying grade, and I think our selling grade should be, I'm not going to lie, close to a 90 because we held out and we got top dollar. We pushed United and Newcastle higher than either of you wanted to pay for both players. We definitely pushed each one up about 10 million by playing a real hardball with both clubs. So from a selling perspective, I think we've got to be in the 90s. The problem we have is from the buying perspective, which as a fan, you're always obsessed with the players you're bringing in. I think that's going to be, that's going to be closer to the C grade because I'm just not quite convinced that we've done enough to necessarily replace, to the best of our ability, the talent that's left. But I'll push us up to an 80 overall because I do think the hardball that Phil Giles, director of football, our management played, like, some clubs would have folded when Newcastle came in with a couple of lower bids. Some clubs would have folded when Man United and all their friends in the press keep putting pressure out there and saying that we're the obstacle to them wrapping up Mbeumo and Mbeumo deal before preseason properly starts, right? There's a lot of pressure on you as a selling club because we're smaller to accept whatever money's on the table. And I think we were really brave and almost audacious, I think, at least pushing the Wissa money as high as we could. I think that was really, really impressive. So we had that standoff with two big English clubs, and I think we came out of it as best as we could have in each scenario. So that is really worth noting.
And outside of the players here, Mr. Batred asking, what do you make of the Keith Andrews appointment?
Yeah, it's a tricky one. I mean, Macra and I have talked about it a fair bit on the show. We'll have to wait and see. I think for many of the fan base, it was a bit disappointing because when you become an established Premier League club and you lose your kind of iconic manager, I guess you get the sense that you want someone with either somebody who's like left field from Europe and is going to be really exciting. And a few clubs have done that recently and it's really worked out in the Premier League. Or you want somebody not who's dry and boring, but somebody who at least has a good understanding of how the Premier League works, which is pretty invaluable, right? This is why we were trying to sign players this window who have played in the Premier League for the most part, because that experience is priceless as a club. So to promote somebody from within who doesn't have any first team management experience, he's had coaching, a little bit of assistant, but he hasn't got that experience. That was a little concerning, but as a Brentford fan, it's basically about trusting the process. And obviously, Matthew Benham, Phil Giles, the team behind the ownership team, feel like they trust him and that they can obviously work best with him. We're just going to have to see tactic-wise. We've seen the best of Keith Andrews in the midweek, or at least in the week against Villa. That was awesome. We've seen the worst of Keith Andrews with that really dismal Notts Forest result. That was a really sad way to start the season. We're just going to have to give him time, and I really hope he gets... I feel like we'd have to be, I hope he gets enough time. I feel like we'd have to be in a real relegation scrap, and it's not looking good for us for him to lose his job, because they've appointed him because they see him as a project manager, right? Somebody who can lead us for at least the next 2 or 3 years, and they clearly trust him. So we will see. The inexperience is concerning as a fan, and I think the problem with losing Thomas Frank is that honestly, pretty much anyone else is likely going to be a downgrade, because I see Thomas Frank as one of the most exciting coaches in the English Premier League. So I think we were always going to go down a level, and it's whether you go with someone tried and trusted and you accept their methods, or you kind of turn to the left and you say, actually, okay, we're going to keep it within the club, in the house, and continue this project, basically. So we'll see. I think everyone's like, he just has to have a chance.
It's sort of like what they're saying, Timuchin is saying in American Scouser with me, just replace Keith Andrews with my name and replace Thomas Frank with Macca's name. We just have to wait and see how this goes. It's really what's going to happen here. Paul is joining us from Shanghai. Hello, Paul. Thanks for joining. Hi, Dara, as well. Thanks again, everyone, for the comments. Won't always put everything up on the screen, but we do appreciate it. So I guess we will segue into the final part of the show today, where we will leave the transfer talk out of it for the last 10 or so minutes, and talk about the upcoming, I guess not the upcoming week, because it's the dreaded international break, where while, yes, earlier in the show I said it was nice to have a break, it's also not nice to not have footy, especially if you were born in a country like Poland, who are absolute trash in everything they do. There's not much to watch there as well. So Glenn, you had mentioned that you had some receipts from last week really quick that I'm going to throw this up and remind us and the viewers what went on last week.
Yeah, so last week we obviously had our predictions, our Tonali's picks. And to be fair to Lone Star London, who screen cap I took of their comment, if they are in the chat, to be fair to them, we had slated West Ham the entire show, right? They had a really poor start to the season, absolutely hammered by Chelsea. However, for my Tonali's pick, I just had a feeling that West Ham might get a positive result in Nottingham Forest, and that would be a real surprise. And I reckon the odds on that were pretty long, and that's what we're trying to do in Tonali's picks. We're not trying to pick the narrow winners. The whole point is to pick that real outsider that if you did put some money on them, you'd have a pretty healthy return. So yeah, I said West Ham on the show last week, and Lone Star Londoner commented, West Ham to beat Forest, don't be daft. And there you go. They didn't just beat them, they hammered them. So there we are. I bought the receipts. It's funny. I had a really good feeling about that tie. So the second I saw that comment, I had just screen capped it just in case the next week I was proved right. And when they knocked in the third goal, I was laughing. So yeah, there it was.
Some Callum Wilson shithousery there at the end. Always good to see. Always good to see.
Should have been 4.
Took all of 8 minutes to absolutely unravel Forest. I guess we'll go over some of the other results too. Brighton over City. I would like to say it was a surprise, but given Hertzler's record against Pep and City in the league, I don't think you can actually be too shocked considering how well he's been able to play against Pep since he's been at Brighton. We had United celebrating as if they won a title after beating Burnley with a Bruno penalty at the end. Maybe surprise here, Spurs dropping points to Bournemouth. And then we had Everton beating Wolves 3-2. And then an absolutely atrocious VAR-filled day with Chelsea and Fulham, with Fulham undeservedly getting a goal chalked off and then pretty much having that entire match ruined based off of the momentum after that. So not a lot of great things to say about there. I know that we've got one of our Fulham supporters here on the panel show sometimes, so I needed to say it, Alex, right? For Alex, we needed to say you guys got absolutely screwed. Chelsea got away with absolute highway robbery. So moving on to post-international break, Sully, we will start with you as far as your Tonali pick. Where are you headed?
Burnley, Liverpool.
I just had a feeling.
8-0 against Liverpool.
I like it.
Isak, he gets his fibula broken in the international break. Career over, no longer able to walk. Real shame. But no, I think Burnley. I think Burnley comes in and steals one. I think Burnley 1-0 over Liverpool, despite Liverpool dominating every statistical category.
I don't like it, but I respect it. Glenn?
Yeah, there's a few tricky ones here. Looking, unfortunately, Sully, at Newcastle Wolves, I mean, you're struggling in front of goal. I guess I get that this is at home, which is a fortress for you, but Wolves kept Strand Larsen, right? That was huge for them. He was high on your list. I'm just looking at some of the matchups, and a lot of them seem quite even, which is always a little bit tricky. But I wouldn't be surprised if Wolves got a decent result with you guys. I mean, there is going to be 2 weeks for you to work with the players, and you're going to have some new forwards coming in, but I don't mind that. But beyond that, it's a little bit tricky. I'd like to say Brentford to get something against Chelsea, but Chelsea do look pretty strong and pretty balanced. Obviously, Cole Palmer might be out, which would be a benefit for us. So yeah, if I was putting a double on, I'd say maybe draws Wolves and Brentford to get a draw. That would be my double, but it's a little tricky. It's a little tricky this week, I think. Nothing's really glaring like this is the upset.
I would throw in like as a parlay, Jack Grealish over 1.5 assists against his boyhood club Villa. I think that's going to be a very, very interesting game, given sort of the Grealish-sance we are in right now, the second coming of Jack Grealish. I think that's going to be an interesting game to watch. I am very impressed with how he's playing and how he's carrying himself at Everton. I would not have said that 2-3 years ago, but I'm kind of cheering for him despite his comments about Miggy Almiron years ago. I kind of like him, and a club like Everton, I think, is going to do well with him. So sprinkle a little of that action on top, over 1.5 assists for Grealish.
I like that.
I think his partnership with Dewsbury Hall has been a pleasant surprise. I did not expect those two to be on the same wavelength as quickly as they have become. I feel like their 1-2 game together has been levels of quicker and above anything I would have expected. So yeah, it's been good to watch. It's good to have Grealish back to being the Grealish on the field and not just the Grealish off the field. Like just the partying drunk. It feels like he just took on that persona and was like, who cares of playing? We're winning. I'm just going to have fun outside of playing footy. And it's good to have him back on the pitch playing the way he does, because when he was at Villa, he was one of the most exciting players in the Prem. And he just got, just shattered by Pep when he made the move. I was going to say I do like Brentford over Chelsea, to be honest. I don't feel like Chelsea is as strong. I think I'm not convinced with their midfield and defensively that they are going to be as consistent throughout the year. And a team like Brentford it's exactly the kind of trap game that I would expect for Chelsea to drop points against. So my vote is a Brentford 2-1 over Chelsea. And if I had to do a little sprinkle and sprinkle with Sully, never mind. I don't have anything else to sprinkle. That's pretty much it. I was looking at Forest maybe getting a draw at the Emirates, but I don't know. I quickly backed off of that one.
Matu, scroll down just a little bit. I think there is money to be made in the City United game. I don't know what that money is, but I think there's something there. Like the fact City bringing in 2 keepers this transfer window and United barely having half of a keeper, I think is going to be a very interesting plot point throughout that game. Is it going to be James Trafford starting at Old Trafford? That will be a very, very interesting subplot to watch as that game progresses.
They will be at the Etihad for this one.
Okay.
But on the return fixture, I imagine by that point Donnarumma is going to be starting. But yeah, we could, if there's an over/under for total goals, like let's say like over 3.5, like that's probably where we're at, right? It's just going to be absolutely open, is what we're thinking there.
I wish United would sign somebody named like Joey Etihad or something. I think that would be like that would be funny. Like Chuck Etihad.
you'd have the double Derby there.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
All right, friends. Well, that's going to do it for today's EPL show. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you to Glenn. Thank you to Sully. You guys are as wonderful as always, and I am just here to try and do the best that I can and keep this show going, because this is probably one of the most, it is the most diverse show that we have on this channel. frankly, because it's not a bunch of Liverpool fans talking about the same stuff over and over as Liverpool fans do. So I appreciate you guys very much. Any parting words, final thoughts, any international break plans?
Just counting down the days till the Premier League's back, really. Watching some cricket. That's my plan.
Solid.
The Bears don't play till Monday, so I really don't know what I'm going to do this weekend. Like, I got 48 hours of freedom.
The wife is probably like, really? There's actually no sports going on this weekend?
Here, little pro tip. If you want the missus to get into sports, start watching the documentaries about sports teams. My wife was super anti-football until we started watching Hard Knocks. Now she treats the NFL season like it's like a reality TV show, but then she'll hit me with something like, man, that left guard for the Cowboys really isn't looking good. I'm like, who are you? Like, what are you talking about, a nickel blitz? Like, what is this?
Once you're emotionally invested, you're all the way in. And that's the beauty of sport, right? That's why we enjoy what we enjoy. We're emotionally invested in this. It's it's great to see. Well, for everyone here at American Scouser, for Solly and Glenn, thank you guys so much. We will see you next. I don't know if there will be a show next Tuesday with the International Break or not, but if we do, we'll see you then. And everyone have a great night, and thank you.